In this video, I'm going to show you how to place your rear brake hose on this Toyota Camry. Let's get started. Because this vehicle has a locking lug nut on the wheels, I'm going to break that free first by hand. That's this one right here. I do not recommend putting an impact of any kind on those locking lug nut keys. Having said that, I'm going to get the key, which should be with the vehicle, spin it until it lines up, press it on, use a 21mm socket and a long breaker bar to get some leverage. There we go, that broke free. Now I can leave it like this. You can use an impact to drive it out the rest of the way. You just don't want to break it free with one because the impacts from the impact can damage the splines on this little key. Now use a 21mm socket and your tool of choice to remove the rest of the lug nuts. With those off, remove the wheel. Now with the wheel off, we have much better access to this brake hose. I'm going to start by trying to remove this fitting off of the line as well as off of the hose. Sometimes this doesn't work out. I already sprayed it with rust penetrant. It is pretty rusty. I'm going to put a 10mm flare nut wrench on this and hopefully something good happens. A lot of times they're seized, so then we have to have a different approach here. Oh, looks like it's spinning the whole fitting with the hose, but my wrench just stripped out the fitting here. It really doesn't want to move. It's just stripping out. It is spinning the whole thing, but it's not breaking loose from the threads. So my next step is going to be using locking pliers, locking them on to the fitting, seeing if I can break it free like this. If not, I do have one last trick that we can try, but let's try to remove it this way first. Lock these on fairly tight. That way you can have some good grip and try to break this free. Oh, all right, so the line is spinning here, as you can see, but I did break the threads free, so that's a good sign. What I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna take a wire brush and see if I can get it on the line here. And I'm gonna spray rust penetrant on here because now what we have to do is break the fitting free from the line itself. Oh, at this point, with that rust penetrant in there, the fitting is spinning on the line. That's good. You do not want to twist the line. If you twist that line, it will break and you'll need a new brake line. At this point, looks like we are making out pretty well here. The fitting is spinning, so I'm just gonna leave it in the snug position there and we can continue. The reason I wanted to start with this is because if this doesn't work out, well, we have to approach the whole project differently. And if that's the case for you, I would start at the caliper side, take the whole brake hose off, which of course I'm going to show you in a second how to do, and then you're going to want to pop this clip off, use locking pliers on this and locking pliers on this, and just try to break it free with it already loose on the other side so you could spin the hose off of the line so you wouldn't have to spin the fitting on the line. But hopefully you don't have to get to that point. Having said that, because this is broken free, I'm going to leave it like this. Let's move further down the hose and disconnect the rest of it. On the strut, you'll see a 12mm bolt holding on this bracket for the brake hose. Remove it. Take that off. I have a collection bucket underneath this caliper because fluid will leak out at this point. Use a 14mm wrench or socket, break this banjo bolt free, and remove it the rest of the way. There we go. Save your banjo bolt. Make sure the washers aren't on the bolt. On this hose, they're on the hose. If there are any washers on the caliper, remove them. At this point, we have to work fast because brake fluid is actively dripping out of the master cylinder. Make sure the mounting area here is clean and ready to go. Inspect your banjo bolt. Mine's good, so I'm going to put a new copper washer on it. Then I'm going to stick it through the hose and then another copper washer on the other side. You want to just basically sandwich the hose in between two copper washers. Slide this over. Make sure that this tab here, this prong, this pin goes into the corresponding slot on the caliper, and then start in the banjo bolt by hand so it doesn't cross thread. Let's snug this up. That's snug. The torque for this banjo bolt is 25 foot-pounds. That's it right there. Basically, you're just looking to crush those two copper washers and squish them a little bit. That's what's gonna make a nice tight seal for you. Now, before we move along, let's take the boot off of the bleeder screw. Now use an 8mm wrench to break this free. Be gentle in case it's seized. You don't want to snap it. Work it back and forth. All right, I'm going to leave it open, and now let's connect the brake hose on the other side. Let's remove this fitting the rest of the way. Now I can grab it with a wrench since it's mostly broken free. Okay, there we go. Line popped out. It is dripping at this point, so keep that in mind. Now let's grab a little pry bar and pop this clip out. All you have to do is just pry it. Just like this. Take that out. Now I'm going to have the new brake hose ready to do the swap quickly, to lose as little brake fluid as possible. And it is slotted here, as you'll notice. So line up the slot, and then you can lock it in. If you don't line up that slot, it will not slide in, and lock it in by tapping this bracket through. You can remove your old brake hose now. There it is. Set that aside, and let's get that line reconnected. When you reconnect it, try to not cross thread it. Just hold the line with one hand and use a wrench or whatever you are using to thread it back on the fitting side. It should thread in smoothly, which it is for me, so that's good. It's getting snug there. So now I'm going to switch to my flare nut wrench because it grips onto a couple more sides than an open-ended wrench. And I'm just going to give it a nice snug here, just like that. And now I will clean off this area so that we can check for leaks later on. Use brake parts cleaner and just rinse it all off. You definitely want to know if you end up having a leak here, you're going to want to fix it. A brake fluid leak is extremely dangerous. You don't want to drive like that. Now let's get the brake hose reattached on the strut. Get the 12mm bolt back through. Start it by hand. Put some anti-seize on it. I recommend it because these a lot of times will seize on here. Snug it back up. This is why I left the bleeder screw open, so that while we work, it's gravity bleeding, as in gravity is pulling the fluid in and up and out the bleeder screw. As you can see, it's dripping right there, so the gravity bleed is actually already complete. Now with the gravity bleed done, it's time to do a manual brake bleed to make sure that there's no air in this line, in this caliper, in the system in general. Otherwise, you'll have a very spongy brake pedal. To begin your manual brake bleed, make sure that your brake master cylinder is topped off with clean fluid. Then you're going to want to have a second person in the car pumping up the brake pedal as you open and close the bleeder screw. So after a few pumps, have them hold pressure on the brake pedal and open up the bleeder screw. At this point, air and fluid will come out. Once the pedal has reached the floor, close off the bleeder screw and have them pump up the brakes again. After 2 to 3 pumps, have them hold pressure on the brake pedal once again and open up the bleeder screw. Repeat this procedure until no more air comes out of the caliper and you have only clean fluid. Once you get to that point, close off the bleeder screw and top off the master cylinder with clean fluid to make sure it's full. Clean all of this off to make sure there's no debris once you have it all done. And with that done, don't forget to put the bleeder screw boot back on so it protects it from debris and prevents it from clogging up. Start on all 5 of your lug nuts, bottom them out, and torque them to 76 foot-pounds. Once again, 76 foot-pounds in a cross pattern. There you go.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.